Yes, thanks very much, Francis. Thanks very much, Francis. And of course, this developing situation here at Kwakhangelamankengane Royal Palace. Let me now bring in Advocate Madonsela, who was here to read out the now late Queen Mantfombi Dlamini Zulu's will. Advocate, thank you so much for your time. An unfortunate situation that has transpired here.
Actually, after Advocate Madonsela, he read the will, there was a complaint, a bittery complaint on the other side of the royal family. They were trying to oppose whatsoever they're written in the will. They're trying to oppose that. But the Premier of the Zulus, which I am a deputy of him, he told them that they must stop. It's not the time of discussing anything here. But the man he proceed, then all of us, we feel fuming, as I'm fuming now, because we're trying to stop him. Actually, all what he was trying to say, he's supposed to go to his lawyer and oppose it to court, not just there. The meeting was not for anyone to oppose. It's just to get the clarity of the will. Actually, today we know who is the king for us, because the successor is the very good young man which can lead the Zulus as far as the will itself himself. So that's all what I can say to you.
Considering what has happened now, obviously, is this going? Do you think that what has been announced here is going to stand? Already there was an application that had been put in, had been filed in the Pietermaritzburg High Court by Mtunkulu, the first wife of the late king. What do you think is going to happen now moving forward after what has transpired?
Actually, I can't say anything about it. I don't want even to put any recommendation on that situation. I just heard the cases on court. I wonder if even this one can go to court, but I can't recommend anything about it, please.
The events that have taken place here today, you are representing the royal family. You've spoken to them inside. What has been their reaction?
Actually, they are very upset. All of them, to us what's happening there. They do not like it at all. Although some of them, 95%, they agree what Mr. Dr. Inkosi Uteles said. 95%. All of the people, they said Uteles is right.
What's the next step now? What is going to happen?
Yes, you're asking a very good question. The next step, just to have a king, that's all. Because we know where we're going to. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Nkosi Buthelezi there, who came out to speak to us. He came to speak to us, of course, about the reaction by the royal family to what has happened here. We initially told that we're going to be speaking to Advocate Madonsela, but instead we spoke to Nkosi Buthelezi, who has come out to speak on behalf of the royal family. Of course, they're saying that they're rather disturbed and upset by the events that have taken place here today, and saying that had Prince Thokozani, who is the one who stood up to try and disrupt the meeting that had been taking place, that had he had an issue, he should have rather had taken the matter to court rather than coming here and disrupting that meeting. But he's saying that 95% of the members of the royal family support what was said tonight, support Prince Misuzulu being named as the one to take over and succeed the late King Goodwill Zwelithini. Let's just move here. I'm going to ask my colleague Rainbow as we move a little bit closer and see what is happening here. The singing and the chanting as the members of the royal family have gathered here. Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu's praise singers are singing and chanting on the steps of Kwakhangelamankengane Royal Palace. ungasibekela ukuthi njengoba bese nihasha ibonge bese nikwenzelani emva kwalesimo esithe senzeka lapha kumdlaji.
Naphela njengoba umntwana waphinda ngene wakwemukela okubhaliweyo nokwabhalwa isilo nokwabhalwa umntana enkosi akukho kithi thina bakwaZulu ongaphezu kwezwi likaNdunankulu athamangisi ngesikhathi sokukhothama kwenkosi ucacayo bathi-ke mntwana wakwamandlakazi uma ungakambulali uNdunankulu umnyamana umbuso kwawuhlwithi ngoba makukhothama ingonyama ifulegi lombuso liphatha uNdunankulu. Ngakho-ke nguye umntwana owaphinda ngene owamemezela esizweni ukuthi akulotsholwe umntana enkosi khipha inkomo isizwe sonke. Nguye umntwana owaphinda ngene owakha lesi sigodlo. Sibongela yena-ke nami ngizibongela ngoba yimi ngonyama eyathi kangiqhuba inkomo ezazolobola umntana enkosi owazibika lapha esigodlweni. Manje-ke lokho kwenzeka namhlanje ngumlando nami sengiyofika kobaba nakobaba mkhulu ngiwuxoxe ngijabulela umntwana okwaphinda ngene ukuthi uNkulunkulu amgcine kuze kufike lolu suku. Kodwa sicela ukuthi ame owenkosi aqondise indlela njengoba aphiwa uba ngumqondisi wendlela.
Baba Mdletshe, okuthe kwamenyezelwa lana okubhalwe kwincwadi esithi wili kaNdunkulu niyahambisana na?
Mina njengomzukulu wamaqhawe asemdletsheni engikwaziyo ozalwa ingonyama akadleli phansi ngoba nathi bakhona abantwana abagane empondweni bafike baphatha, bakhona abantwana abagane eXhoseni bafike baphatha, umntwana lo bese kuthiwa unoyoliswa bafike waphatha esizweni samahaha. Bekungabi ingonyama noZulu iphambana nesiko lakwaZulu ma ibingadlelisa umntwana wengonyama usobhuza imdlelise phansi.
Kuyani phambili lesimo Baba Mdletshe, akusona isimo esihle lesi sisibona senzeka la kuNdunkulu. Mhlawumbe yini ungayinxusa kuyani phambili?
Ubunye siyabunxusa eNdunkulu ngoba nangesikhathi kukhothama ingonyama uDinizulu wayemncane ingonyama uMaphumuzana uSolomon, kodwa uyena owabekwe esihlalweni ukhona umbango. Kanjalo nengonyama ezala lekhona yabekwa ukhona umbango ohlala kulesi sihlalo usuke sekhonjwe phezulu. Ngakho-ke ngeze ngesiphikisane nokumenyezelwe namhlanje uma singuzulu kwangoqobo.
Baba Mdletshe, ukhumbuza nababukeli bethu ukuthi waqala nini ukusebenza nembubi?
Uqala kwami impela okucacile sengibonga phambi kwehlwele kwaba u1974 kwaqhubeka kwa1976 kwadukuza ayikho enye inyosi yayikhona kwakukhona mina ngalelo langa bewuvalile umkhosi bethi ungaze wagujwa ngoba kuyawubuya igwelu zaseGoli. Amazwe yawakhuluma lelo langa ayejulile. Ngaqhubeka lapho-ke kuze kube namuhla angibuyanga ngabheka emuva. Nengonyama ibihlonipha umlando wakababa, ihlonipha umlando kaMavukefile, ihlonipha umlando kwawomsushwana, kwawongomane, kwawomfuzi.
Baba Mdletshe, siyabonga kakhulu. That was the King's praise singer. It is getting a bit noisy here, Francis, so I hope you can still hear me.
Indeed I can, Ayanda, and thank you for bringing us these incredible visuals live from Ngoma in KwaZulu-Natal. I don't know if Ayanda can hear us. Ayanda, if you can, earlier there were some scenes. We saw what seemed to be guns. Obviously, police are there, and some even heard gunshots. All right, I don't think Ayanda can hear us anymore. Just to recap what happened tonight, chaotic scenes after the will of the late Queen Mantfombi Dlamini Zulu was read out, and she said not only in the will but also in a letter that her preferred successor is her firstborn son, Misuzulu Zulu, the son she had with the late King Goodwill Zwelithini. Then the son of another queen stood up, tried to challenge that, put down, immediately said by Prince Misuzulu that he should not be talking, that he should sit down. And then this insecurity situation ensued. All right, Ayanda, I believe you can hear me. And my question to you was, have you witnessed any real violence tonight? At one point, it seemed like we even heard gunshots, but it was very hard to tell. It was very chaotic, camera movement all over. Just tell us what you heard and witnessed as the Prince Misuzulu Zulu, the incoming king, and his siblings were whisked away tonight.
I'm struggling a bit to hear you, Francis, but I heard you, I think you were referring to the situation when the princes and princesses were then whisked out of the palace. Certainly it was or became rather tense at that time. We saw individuals, of course it was dark as well in the area in which we were trying to move from when we were being chased away. We saw individuals that had rifles, and we could also hear gunshots at a distance. That is when, of course, at the time we were being chased out of the palace. Members of the royal family then saying, could we please switch off our cameras? But thereafter, when Prince Misuzulu was then whisked away together with his siblings, all his 8 siblings, as well as the king's widows, the 2 queens, Queen Mantfombi as well as Queen Mate. They were also part of the meeting. Their security then also whisked them out of the palace. But just a few minutes ago, Francis, I was speaking to the late king's praise singer, just to gauge. Babu Mdletshe has worked with the king as his praise singer since 1974, meaning every single day and wherever the king went, from moving from palace to palace, whether or not he had gone abroad, Babu Mdletshe was always next to the king. And so in terms of what the king's wishes would have been, he is somebody that is well placed to speak about what has happened here today. Babu Mdletshe, of course, quite disappointed about what has happened here today, but also then saying that he supports what has been said and announced here tonight in that will, and also then, of course, commending the role of the Amazulu Prime Minister Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, in saying that Babu Mdletshe was also a part of the delegation that in the early 70s went to Eswatini to pay the lobolo for the late Queen Mantfombi Dlamini Zulu. And he is saying that what has been announced here today in terms of Zulu culture and tradition, that of course she is the great wife and should be the mother to the heir of the throne. He also then called for a unity, calling for members of the royal family to accept the announcement here today, and he is then hopeful that members of the royal family will be able to come together to get over these differences. But I was just watching him, Francis, earlier on as we were all rushed out to the front of the palace. He was a man that was deeply, deeply disturbed by what has happened. In fact, during the late kings, or the preparations for the interment of the late king and the memorial service, we had several opportunities to speak to Babu Mdletshe, and he had said that in fact he had retired in December last year, and that the king had called him back to work with him. And so he was part of these processes. He was also the chief mourner when the late king Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu passed away. We also saw Babu Mdletshe was part of the delegation that traveled to Johannesburg to collect the remains of the late queen. And so every single day, Francis, he arrives at the palace, wherever the king was going to be, and outside the palace, he will then sing the king's praises. So this is a man, as I was saying, that is well placed to speak to us and also to share his views on this unfortunate situation that has happened here today. The Amabutho, I see more Amabutho have now come through. Many of them had been outside the palace as the meeting was taking place, just to allow the royal family, of course, that space to meet. And so we now see that they are now here outside the front entrance of Kwakhangelamankengane Palace. And there is a sign of unity. They're trying to show a sign of solidarity, a sign of unity as they're singing and they're chanting. In fact, the song that they're singing now is meaning who runs this land and why this dispute. They are showing, we also see some of the maidens as well have also come out here today. They're of course trying to, I suppose, distract from the events that have taken place here today. And also, this is a sign of them showing their support and happiness at the fact that Prince Misuzulu has been announced as the successor to the throne. Amongst those, as we were saying earlier, who are here, we also did see 3 of the late king's sons. They are also a part of this group of Amabutho, some members of the royal family, the maidens who have gathered out here at the entrance of Kwakhangelamankengane Royal Palace. They are singing and chanting inside. We understand that other members of the royal family are still inside. The late king's mother, Ndlovukazi Dlamini, she is inside the palace meeting with the other members of the royal family. We were told that somebody from another representative of the royal family was going to come out and address the media. We have not yet been given an indication as to when that is likely to happen. Francis, I must also mention that I suppose the disappointment and the utter shock at what has happened, an embarrassment, as one of the members of the royal family was saying walking past me, is because as you know, for the funeral, the members of the royal family from the kingdom of Eswatini, which included the late Queen's brother and close family members, had been part of the delegation that came and that have been here for the preparations for her interment and the memorial service here today. In fact, her brother was also part of that meeting. And so this is no doubt an embarrassment from the Amazulu Royal family at what has transpired, that these guests, that members of the Eswatini royal family who are here and had been sent by King Mswati on his behalf, as well as the Queen Mother in Eswatini, to come and pay their condolences to his sister and also, of course, the daughter, being that Queen Mantfombi was the daughter of the Queen Mother in Eswatini. So I suppose, as I was saying, one of the members of the royal family walking past saying, this is huge embarrassment because of the guests, she said, that are here. We have not seen where they have gone to. My understanding is possibly that they've also gone inside the palace. So certainly it will be a difficult situation to explain. They had been asked to stay and be part of this meeting and the reading of their sister's will. And so what has transpired here certainly has been of great disappointment to the members of the Amazulu royal family. Francis?
If you can hear me, can you confirm that the crowd has whittled down? You were saying that the people who are left are all chanting seemingly in support of Prince Misuzulu Zulu, who's been announced as the successor. And then where have the opposers gone, including the man who stood up, who's the son of another queen, who wanted to perhaps dispute what was read out tonight?
Yes, Francis, the crowd has whittled down, as you are saying, with some members of the royal family, of course, are inside the palace, and then there's this group that is now outside. The group that was opposing the will and what has now been said in the will, we understand, left the palace, but we are told, Francis, that two people were seen being taken away by police and handcuffed. So we are unsure at the moment whether one of them was Prince Thokozani, who had stood up, but my colleague Nonkulego Hlopa, in fact, is indicating to me that indeed there were two individuals. We are not yet sure whether or not there are some of the senior members of the royal family who have indeed were taken away in handcuffs by the police. But insofar as where the other group has gone, you would understand, Francis, that during that commotion, it was dark. We were trying to find our way. We are not familiar, of course, with the palace grounds ourselves. And so when we saw the firearms being pulled out, we were trying to rush to a safer area. And it's likely that at that time, that group then left the palace. What we do know, Francis, in the afternoon, that group was meeting at, we are told, but this is not confirmed, at Kwakhangelamankengane Palace, which is in fact not far from where we are. And that's the information that we have been able to get. But insofar as where they are now, one is uncertain about that. Francis?
Ayanda, you confirmed that you heard those gunshots that we heard here in studio, but we don't know where those came from. Is that correct?
Certainly, Francis, we do not know where those came from, and it happened during the time when there was that commotion. So what happened, Francis, and maybe let me try and take you and our viewers through. We were at the back of the palace where marquee had been set up. That is where the meeting was going. That is where the meeting with the lawyers and the will was being read out. Now, as soon as Prince Thokozani then stood up, and that commotion between him and Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, when instructed him to sit down, Prince Thokozani then responding and asking Prince Buthelezi what he has done, and other members of the royal family that were with Thokozani then saying that he was not going to sit down. At that point then, security that was with Prince Misuzulu then grabbed him and ushered him into the palace. Then the Prince of Buthelezi moved closer to try and engage with that group. When seemingly they were not hearing each other, the commotion then when we saw the princes and princesses, Prince Misuzulu's siblings, then also running out. They were being grabbed by who we believe are their security and rushed into cars. The cars then whisked them out. It took a few moments while Prince Misuzulu was inside the palace. Cars then moved right here to the front. The doors then opened. We saw then police as well forming a line, and Prince Misuzulu was then whisked into a car, and he then left the palace. It was during that commotion of him moving from the marquee into to the house when those gunshots were heard. But it seemed to be it seemed that they were ringing a bit of a distance from where we were, Francis. But at this point, we can confirm that yes, indeed, we did hear them. Whether or not they were outside the palace, we are unsure, and who fired those gunshots, we are unsure. But immediately, that is when we saw police officers who had been stationed outside the palace, then making their way into the palace. Let me quickly now bring in my colleague Simpiwe Makanya. Of course, we have been bringing you the coverage today of the memorial service, and of course the events that have taken place here. Now, at some point, myself and Simpiwe moved into two separate directions. Simpiwe, we're discussing the commotion that took place when Prince Thokozani stood up, and that altercation that he had. You went in a completely different direction to the direction that we went, and I think at that time we were also trying to find a safe place for us, because a lot of people were saying it's dangerous, get out, get out. Speak to us about what you saw when you moved away.
Well, I under a very volatile situation here at Kwakhangelamankengane Royal Palace. As you put it, Ayanda, the minute Prince Thokozani stood up, there was also that expectation of what is he going to say, because you'd recall in the build-up to today that he's been one of those people in the background, though, expressing unhappiness about certain aspects leading to today's announcement. The minute the newly appointed Amazulu king was whisked away from the Marquee Ayanda, we started seeing people screaming and shouting and basically raising concerns about their safety. Then when the king was inside the palace, then we saw a heavy police presence surrounding the entrance, both entrances of the palace. Unprecedented situation we have witnessed here at Kwakhangelamankengane Royal Palace. But some would say, Ayanda, that it was always going to be expected. Something of this nature, it was always going to be expected because of the feuds and the disagreements which have led to us being here, Ayanda.
Well, certainly, Simpiwe, and you know that Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, in his capacity as the traditional Prime Minister of the Amazulu nation, has been trying to navigate what has been a really difficult situation. It was a week or two ago, Simpiwe, when he issued a statement concerned that there were parallel meetings that he said, and in those meetings he named Princess Thembi and Prince Mbonisi, who are the brother and sister to the late king. Of course, Simpiwe, you also had an interview where you spoke following that statement, where you sat down with Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Share with us what his sentiments were.
Well, I would recall that the initial statement that he issued following the departure of Her Majesty Queen Mantfombi Dlamini Zulu was basically trying to reassure South Africans that there will be no leadership vacuum following, of course, this unfortunate incident. But speaking to the politics of the Royal House, Ayanda, Prince Misuzulu Buthelezi, in his capacity as the traditional Prime Minister of Amazulu, has been playing an integral role in trying to unite some of these what some may refer to as different factions within the royal household. The situation that basically a lot of people were basically expecting is the issue of leadership, and now this played out just minutes basically after the announcement of the new king. Prince Misuzulu Buthelezi has been at pains to actually criticize those parallel meetings that actually they are not supposed to be happening, and basically urging members of the royal family to unite during this time and come under one sort of umbrella and understand that this royal family has got a very important role to play, not only in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, but I can certainly tell you that in South Africa as a whole.
I'm just going to quickly, Simpiwe, will be watching here, go through what was read out by Advocate Madonsela in the late Queen's will, where he gave the reasons why Prince Misuzulu had been the one that was chosen to ascend to the throne. The will had said that, of course, he is he's the son of the king. Let me firstly say that she explains her role, saying that she is of royalty, therefore she is the great wife. She is the only wife whose lobolo was paid for by the nation. And earlier on, even the late king's praise singer, Buzatsheni Mdletshe, attesting that he was amongst the delegation that went to pay the lobolo in Eswatini for the late queen. He then went on to say that in accordance and with the long-standing tradition of royalty, that the firstborn son of that union must succeed to the throne, saying that it was importantly, and they even laughed at this point, that Misuzulu had no previous convictions, was of sound mind, and there were no other impediments. And taking all that into account, she was saying then that he should be the next king of the Amazulu nation. Of course, it was also explained in the will that should he refuse or not want to take over this role, then that decision, his sisters and brothers would then have to decide on who would be their decision. In fact, I think Simpiwe, they said that there would have to be a secret vote by the late queen's children, and they would then decide of the other sons who would then ascend to the throne.
Perhaps the question on everyone's lips right now, Ayanda, is where to from here. We are going to be expecting Prince Misuzulu Zulu in his capacity as the traditional prime minister to sort of address members of the media. It's not clear whether it's going to be happening tonight or tomorrow, but we are certainly going to be trying to keep tabs on what Prince Misuzulu Zulu will have to say about what has just transpired here at the Royal House. And certainly we will also try to get the other side, the other side being represented by Prince Thokozani Ayanda. The situation outside the Royal Palace, Amabutho still chanting slogans, still singing outside, but I can tell you that many of those who were here to witness this historic announcement perhaps left home, left to various destinations, went back home disappointed after seeing what transpired earlier today, Ayanda.
Yeah, no, certainly. There was great excitement. You know, earlier on during the day when Prince Misuzulu arrived during the memorial service, arriving with Amabutho, great excitement. In fact, many saying that it was a rather significant moment, and it pointed to the fact that there was the next king who was preparing himself, who was amongst his warriors, and he was presenting himself to those that were here. So the indications were already were there throughout the day, particularly at that point when we saw him come through. And we also understand that Simpiwe, he was wearing ibheshu, which was that of his grandfather, King Cyprian kaBhekuzulu, and he was also, you will assist me here, that there were other traditional attire that he was wearing, and parts of those belonged to his late father.
Certainly, Ayanda, those who know the history
All right, we've lost the live footage there. Incredible reporting tonight from our colleagues Ayanda Mhlobo and Simpiwe Makanya. And if you've just tuned in, if you joined this chaos a little bit late, a quick recap. The will of the Queen, the late Queen Mantfombi Dlamini Zulu, was read out, and she said not only in the will but also in a letter that Misuzulu Zulu, her firstborn son with King Goodwill Zwelithini, the late king, was her preferred successor. Another royal son stood up, the son of another queen, and he was told to sit down, and absolute chaos ensued. Ayanda confirming that they did hear those gunshots, not right in the marquee or in the complex, but from a little distance away. That was the chaos earlier. Right now the scene has calmed down. Let's go back to Ayanda to wrap this up. She's in conversation with Simpiwe.
Basically saying that he has done
Ayanda,
Francis, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Francis. I can hear you. Thanks very much, Francis. We do apologize. Of course, there is quite a bit of noise outside as the momentum is building here with Amabuthu, who are here outside, and Izintombi as well, the maidens who are now outside Kwakhangelamankengane Royal Palace. And I'm still with my colleague Simpiwe Makanya. And Francis, we lost the connection there with you just for a little bit. And what Simpiwe was saying was that we're expecting an address by Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi. They have said to us that he is going to be addressing us. So that is what we are waiting for. Unfortunately, we don't have an indication yet of the time. Simpiwe was also explaining the song that they are singing now. Just very briefly, Simpiwe, Elethi Izwe Wandomba.
Exactly. That's the question that perhaps many people will be asking Ayanda after witnessing the unfortunate events unfolding here at Kwakhangelamankengane Royal Palace. Just maybe a little bit of correction there to our colleagues. Prince Thokozani is not actually the son of King Goodwill Zwelithini. Ayanda?
Indeed, no, he's not. We understand that he is the son of a cousin or close family member. But what we do know is that he has been supporting Prince Mbonisi as well as Princess Thembi. And in those parallel meetings that Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi referred to, we have confirmed that indeed Prince Thokozani was a part of that grouping there. It's going to be a long night, Francis. It seems here there's still a very, very heavy police presence here at the palace, and the possibility, of course, is Amabuthu. These are the late king's warriors. These are the late kings and the protectors of the royal family, and seeing them come out here now, they are possibly going to be standing in guard to protect the royal family throughout the night. We aren't too sure at the moment whether anything else is going to happen. It seems that the police have managed to contain. In fact, from where I am, I can see the gates of the palace are closed. So, of course, the police are all over now, ensuring that they monitor what is happening here in the palace grounds. Francis?
I mean, can we say here that Prince Misuzulu Zulu is safe? He was whisked away and he's not in any danger right now. And then there are some people who are potentially still in custody. Do we know who those possible members even of the royal household or supporters who you said were taken away in handcuffs?
Francis, we have at this point been unable to ascertain who those members of the royal family are. In fact, whether or not they are indeed members of the royal family. You would understand, Francis, that there was a lot of people who were here as well wanting to listen in. So yes, there were the members of the royal family. There was this large delegation that had come from Eswatini. But of course, there were many other people that were also around here in the palace grounds. So it could have, at this point, we're unsure in terms of the identities of who those individuals are. But certainly we are going to be trying to get that information. And of course, as you were saying now, Prince Misuzulu and his siblings having been whisked away from the palace. At this point, we do not know where they were taken to. So that is probably going to be information that we're likely to get when we speak to Prince when Nkosi Mangosuthu comes out and addresses us. Francis?
Maybe that question that Simpiwe raised aptly, where to from now? So he's been ordained, he's been given the blessing of his mother, but Prince Misuzulu Zulu, when and how does he officially become the king? And I guess you can also wrap up what you were saying earlier about the consolidation of those court cases opposed to what's happening regarding the will, etc.
Francis, you are breaking up a bit, but I heard you speaking about consolidation of the court cases. Indeed, yesterday we learned that those two applications, the one that had been made by the late king's first wife, Queen Dlamini Zulu, where she was challenging or wanting claim to 50% of the king's estate, and of course the other application had been filed by her daughters, and they had brought into question the signature that was on the king's will, and they said that they had appointed a handwriting expert and they had compared the signatures that they had in their possession, or their late father's signature that they had on documents in their possession, to that signature that was on the will, and they were disputing, of course, that that is the late King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu's signature. Of course, what transpired in court, we understand, was that those matters were then struck off the roll and needed to be consolidated into one application. It now remains to be seen, Francis, whether or not the first wife, the Queen Dlamini, is then going to approach the courts again in that consolidated application. But from what we have been picking up here from some of the members of the royal family, that is what they're anticipating now, that the likelihood is that this group or these members of the royal family that were opposed to the decision, that to the announcement of Prince Misuzulu as the king of Amazulu, that the likelihood now was that they were going to go to there's a likelihood that they too may approach the courts, but we'll have to wait and see, Francis. At this point, we still need to track down the that other group and see if we can be able to speak to them and just to get an indication to them of what happened, but also moving forward, what's going to happen now. Francis?
Well, let's give you an opportunity to do that. Let's take a short break and we'll return to these visuals from Ngoma in KwaZulu-Natal, from around the palace. Incredible scenes that we've witnessed tonight. And my colleagues Ayanda and Simpiwe will be back with us, and we are expecting an announcement from the traditional Zulu Prime Minister head Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Stay with us.